By now you've heard the name, you've read the files, and maybe you've even seen the pictures connecting him with billionaires and powerful people all across the world. When you hear the name Jeffrey Epstein, you think of private island, powerful connection, and unspeakable crimes. But what if I told you he wasn't the first? He wasn't the first to have intelligence ties, work with different governments, and compromise the elite. What if I told you that this pattern of shady figures working with governments and compromising people through blackmail rings with unimaginable acts goes way back? Not years, but decades. Well, if that was the case, and Jeffrey Epstein is more than just a being, but a pattern, a reoccurring web that binds both assets, money, and connections, all through the ideas of blackmail and unspeakable acts. Well, for that, I'd have to introduce you to Manuel Noriega, Panama's prince of blackmail. And if this is true, then that would mean something devastating. It would mean that these shady figures, these evil people, are not acting alone or acting on their personal whims based on their impulses. They're actually a part of the system themselves and are reoccurring figures that do not disappear over the course of time, even if their murder weapon does. Now first, let me give you some context on Jeffrey Epstein and what we're talking about and how he connects to Manuel Noriega. Now the rise of Jeffrey Epstein is very controversial and very bizarre. He starts teaching at Dalton, which is a private school. He gets kicked out of there for inappropriate behavior. Then immediately after that, he gets a job in finance where he works with Bear Stearns until he got fired because of malfinancial practices. Now later on, he works with an individual named Lex Wexner. I know I butchered the name, allow me. You know this guy, he's one of the heads of Victoria's Secret. Now he's a very rich individual and he actually ends up signing power of attorney, meaning that Jeffrey Epstein had control over Lex Wexner and the company itself. If he wanted to put Lex Wexner in a mental institution, he was able to do that. If he wanted to sell the company, he could do that. Very weird thing to do when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that you own and you're going to sign that away to somebody that you just met. Now, Jeffrey Epstein is known to have a relationship with intelligence services, whether we're talking about the CIA or the Mossad. David Acosta, when he was asked about why Jeffrey Epstein got a sweetheart deal and was allowed to operate despite the fact that he was a registered sex offender in 2008, he said that Epstein was intelligence. So we'll leave that at that. Now, as you know, Jeffrey Epstein was set to go to trial and he ends up dead in his jail cell. Yeah. Now, to gain a better understanding of Epstein and his operation, to go back and across the sea into Panama. Okay, so in 1968, there's a coup in Panama. Now in this coup, there's a change of power, and the person who seizes power is Omar Torrijos. I know I butchered the name, again, that's going to be a trend for this video. Now Noriega ties in because he was a very loyal supporter, and his reward for supporting Omar is he gets put in charge of military intelligence, allowing him to spy on rivals and maintain power for the current government. Now with this new position, the CIA took their opportunity. Keep in mind, the Cold War is going on and communism is spreading, at least in the minds of the Americans, and they do not want communism to be spreading to any of these Caribbean countries. So for over 10 years, the CIA pays Noriega to keep tabs and report back to him on communist developments and events going on in the region. So just to backtrack, Noriega himself is providing intelligence to the CIA, and he's supporting Contras in Nicaragua as well on their behalf. And this is all confirmed. I know, it's wild. Now in 1983, the leader of Panama, Omar Torrijos, dies in a plane crash. Mysterious, the details are a little bit shady surrounding it. Now nevertheless, that leaves Noriega to consolidate power and become the de facto leader of the nation. Now what's interesting about Noriega is he himself never directly becomes the president of Panama. He instead installs political puppets so that he can use to do his bidding, and anytime he step out of line, gone. See, Noriega held a very tight hold on the military, which allowed him to install leaders and take them out as needed, and they would stay loyal to him. Now, the problem with this is Noriega became more and more brutal over time to maintain fear and control. And the thing about rising with the CIA is you will always have a downfall, and that came in 1988. He murders a political opponent named Hugo Spadafora, and is later indicted by US grand juries for drug trafficking. Now, not even a year later, a U.S. Marine is killed in Panama. Noriega holds another fraudulent election, and that's where the U.S. steps in and invades Panama in 1989, and they surrender in January 1990. Shortly after that, Noriega is arrested, brought back to the US, and remains in a jail cell, where he dies in 2017. Now, what's important to understand is during his reign, Noriega was not your traditional dictator. Instead of ruling with a bold iron fist and presenting himself as the figurehead in charge of every single operation, he would rather control things behind the scenes and in the shadows. While he's dealing with the CIA and maintaining control in his own country, he was known to use interesting tactics to maintain control and stay one step ahead of everybody in the circle. He would use means of surveillance such as wiretaps, cameras in every room, intelligence gathering via blackmail and paying people off. Now here's where we see some shades of Epstein and Noriega here. While he was in power, it was known that he would leave no stone unturned when it came to compromising individuals, whether they were members of the US government, ambassadors, visitors, or just general people with strong connection. It was alleged that he would be hiring underage prostitutes to sleep with the powerful people that were coming into his country in tapped rooms, talking about cameras, wiretaps, and he would maintain that information as a form of blackmail to keep them in their place and on their toes. Now that seems very familiar to another operation that I can think of. Now this was one of the most extreme forms of leverage that Noriega was known to use. When we look at Noriega's personal life, he had a lot of depravity, specifically on the sexual side. Now in California, he was actually convicted of SA for one of his stepdaughters, who was also a child at the time. I'm not going to say the word of what the crime was, but you can surmise what this is. And he had a lengthy track record of multiple SA allegations in Panama as well. Now when we speak about the blackmail that Noriega conducted in Panama, we can't do that without talking about David Blundy, a British journalist who broke the news story, not just on the Noriega tapes, not just on Noriega's way of controlling what was going on in his nation via blackmail and different operations, but he directly put out the honeypot allegations. That's a story about the underage prostitutes, and he wrote that and published the story. So David published the claims about the compromising material involving Noriega's operations, and shortly after he was killed by a sniper bullet during the invasion of Panama. Very bizarre timing, to say the least. We definitely have to put a little red flag on that death. Now, the official story is it was just crossfire. There were bullets flying everywhere. It was hard to know who, and a sniper caught David Blundy and killed him. Now, what's really weird about that is he wasn't caught by a stray bullet from an AK or a handgun or, a misidentification of troops on either side. He was killed by a sniper, and snipers don't just shoot at anything. So the fact that he, the journalist who just published a paper about the country that the invasion is occurring in, where the US are coming in invading, and he gets shot, that is very bizarre, to say the least, but that's the official narrative. Things that are unlikely do occur, but when the timing of events continues to be almost too good to be true for the parties involved, that's when you have to start questioning the official narratives. You have to ask yourself, what do the people in power gain from you believing them, and what do they lose if you don't? Now, unfortunately, David Blundy is not the only death associated with the Noriega tapes and the allegations of the involvement of minors. And this is where Gary DeVore comes into the story. Gary DeVore was a well-known director of multiple movies starring A-list actors. He famously had one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Gary was writing a script about the rise to power, the constant coups, and the US's involvement in Panama. Allegedly, in his script, he was going to discuss the Noriega tapes, the blackmail ring, and the alleged parties that were involved with those underage prostitutes. Now, this is not the first time that he put out movies that were slightly provocative, but he was sure that this would be nothing out of the ordinary. Unfortunately, he was wrong. During a late night drive in Arizona, Gary disappeared and his body was not found. Until a year later, his car was found washed up in a body of water in California, and what they discovered would be shocking. He had no hands. Yes, Gary DeVore's body was missing its hands. Clearly, somebody was trying to send a message. The official report states that Gary died of a car accident / drowning. Just think about that for a second. A man with a wife and kids at home disappears, is found a year later without his hands, but the cause of death is drowning. Now, with the deaths of David Blundy and Gary DeVore all associated with the Noriega tapes and the allegations of a blackmail ring, it's almost impossible not to see the similarities with Epstein and how Epstein was running a blackmail operation involving powerful elites. While in power, Noriega had ties with intelligence agencies, criminal networks, trafficking drugs, and an unhealthy obsession with information control. And Jeffrey Epstein had elite connections, operated in secrecy while still keeping tabs on the elites, and they provided information back to him, and a confirmed exploitation network. Now, the core message here is both Noriega and Epstein operated in different eras, in different regions, but seemingly had the same system, an information system, a blackmail system, a system that kept everyone around you walking on eggshells and you as the most powerful person at the center of the web. In both of these environments, power operates in the shadows, and it's not held by the people that are most loud or put themselves on a pedestal. It's held by people allowing others to excel and be propped up, knowing that they themselves are compromised. Now, at the end of the day, we're never going to really know the full story or exactly what went on with Noriega and the operations he was running in his country, because the truth almost never reveals itself. Understand, power protects itself, and one of the best ways it can do that is by creating a system where information is controlled. So the question isn't who exactly was Epstein. The question is how many of them have come before and how many are existing after. Thank you guys for watching the video. Be sure to show some love, like and subscribe. And we got content like this coming out every single week, and we stream every day on Twitch. So be sure to follow that at Prince_Prefire. Until then, stay safe.